Everyone, this is Ryan with McKenna Capital. I'm also joined here by Eng Tang of Tozy Capital. I'm sure some of you are aware of the recent updates with Compute North's bankruptcy. We sent an email out a couple weeks ago as we were notified of that. And so we wanted to put together another update just to share what happened since then, where things stand, what we're doing to mitigate risk. I'm sure you've seen the headlines out there. It's a rough time for not only Bitcoin, but other assets. And you've got just a lot of different things going on. And Compute North was just one of the victims of that. But you're seeing multi-billion-dollar hedge funds having issues as well, and a lot due to the leverage that was used. And fortunately, we're in a good position with our fund. This is in regards to Bitcoin Mining Fund 4. We don't have leverage on our miners. And from a risk mitigation standpoint, we're in a good position here. We're just being indirectly impacted by some of our partners in the industry. And Compute North was the host site provider for our Granbury, Texas operation. And that's where we had roughly 80% of our miners that are on site right now. And hopefully we'll get them turned on when we find out who's going to be the new site host. But I'll let Eng kind of dive further into just what's going on with the current situation, his role in this situation as well. I think you guys will find a little comfort as far as what Eng's doing behind the scenes now. I know he's working tremendously hard on the situation, and I'm going to try to put us in the best position possible for a successful outcome here. With that being said, Eng, I'll let you take it over here, and if you could give us kind of an update on where things stand today, maybe any news that has come out or anything you've learned since the last update, and then we can just jump into more kind of market conditions, how the fund's performing, anything else that you feel would be worthwhile to share with investors today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. So it's been a difficult time the past few months, and especially last month. A month ago, when I heard Compute North was filing for bankruptcy, and obviously I was very concerned. I wanted to get as much information as possible. One thing I let everybody know was I applied for a committee spot, which is a very limited committee spot overseeing the bankruptcy proceedings. I was notified that I was selected, and then I was actually nominated to be chairperson. And that's been taking up a significant amount of time, by more than I thought it would have. Literally 3 hours, sometimes a day, with lawyers and investment bankers and financial advisors, etc. Literally had a 4-hour meeting to interview and hire lawyers for this case. And the fees are going to be pricey. That's all comes from the asset sale. So why I'm mentioning this is because twofold. One is it allows us and me to have say in what's happening in the proceedings and to secure our claims. And two, while I need to be impartial to everything, I can definitely still tell everybody what's public knowledge in terms of what the bankruptcy filings are. So what has been going on September 22nd, there was a petition date. We attended that. And then the case milestone proceeds fairly quickly, which is why we're working very quickly on this, talking about the bankruptcy filing. It's going to come to a head in the beginning of November, where they are trying to sell all the assets to essentially relinquish the debt and transition. So what does that mean for us? One, since I've been communicating with Compute North, in the beginning, they were communicative, they were responsive. Shortly after, they stopped being responsive. It's systematic of two reasons. And I have a good friend at Celsius and Celsius Mining, who actually leads Celsius Mining, and they are telling me what's been going on there. And so it gives me a little perspective. One, everybody's telling them to talk to the lawyers. So lawyers aren't talking, so just lines of communication is shutting down. Two, they've reduced their staff and headcount significantly. So I don't know if Josh or Tyler, people I've been working with on a day-to-day basis on operations, even work there anymore. That's challenging on one hand. Now, the good news is that it's not like they're not running at all. Fund 1, which was my first fund with Bitcoin mining, is with Compute North. I can see that they're running now. I can see that my questions about repairs and other stuff aren't being answered. So running without support. Unfortunately, with what we call the Granbury, or what we call Wolf Hollow site, it was not turned on, or I suspect that ERCOT did not allow them to turn on because of this proceeding until this resolved.
And
Uh,
could you just elaborate on what ERCOT is, just for investors so they know some of the players in this?
yeah, ERCOT is the nonprofit that governs the Texas energy grid. And Texas is a unique grid itself. It's separate from the rest of America, and it's a very market-based grid. So they have approved 200 megawatts of load, which is what we call power consumption, at this Wolf Hollow site. What that means is if there was no bankruptcy, things would probably be on now. So what are we trying to do? My biggest concerns. There's three concerns I bet every investor has as well. One, are our assets safe? Are the miners safe from the bankruptcy filings? Are they ours, etc.? Two, and this is my concerns, is our contract safe? Will they honor our contract? Because that's a valuable part of this deal. I'll touch base into that later. And three, when are we going? Obviously, that's what everybody's very concerned with, and me as well. Though I do think the first two are more important. So let me address them one by one. First, Sun and Sphere have tens of thousands of machines with Compute North at this facility, the same facility as we do. So we're not alone. And they filed motions to essentially ensure the rights of those miners. In effect, they ensure the proper rights of all miners, and the bankruptcy judge agreed to that. So for the most part, I feel pretty assured that our assets are ours. Our property rights will be protected. So I'm not really concerned with number one, which is our miners are our miners. Number two, is our contract secure? That is, I would say, my biggest concern. Our contract is for 5.8 cents hosting. That is sub-market rate. And what that means is if we were going to find a new place to host our machines, they would likely be close to 8 cents. In fact, I had an offer yesterday to move some of my miners for 8.75 cents. That would mean that a significant amount of miners are unprofitable. It doesn't make sense to pay that much money. So the value of Compute North's assets, actually part of the biggest value is their energy hedge. They made a hedge against energy, locked in the power contract for a significant number of years at around 4 cents rate. That allows them to essentially make a profit if we're paying them 5.8 cents. There's other companies like Marathon that have a sub 5 cents rate. Now they contributed capital, so that's potentially why they got that lower rate. But if you're a new buyer or a new owner of these sites, you're probably very incentivized to reset our market rates. It's like buying a multifamily building and saying, I'm going to adjust our rents to market rate. That's going to make it much more profitable than some contracts like ours that are 6 years contracts that are sub market rate. So that's my biggest concern. I'll address some of those points, what's going on there. And the third is, when are we going online? I do believe that we'll be online this year if the second thing is honored, which is the contract's honored. And I think I'll fight tooth and nail for that. So I'll pause there and let you ask any questions, as well as I'll have some more updates as well.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks for laying that out. Regarding the first point, our assets that we paid for in cash, you had mentioned that there's something was filed to basically claim or secure that. I mean, has that been filed for us? You mentioned
that was filed not for us, but that was filed for Marathon, which and Sphere, and we're not the only two. They're not the only two. There's many more, but that in effect covers everyone there.
Oh, so it covers us too then as part of that file. Okay. Yeah. So basically that won't be part of any bankruptcy sale then, because those assets have been basically put into another bucket. They're not owned by Compute North, and that eliminates that risk over there, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. The next thing I think on the contract, if I hear you on just where things are at, so say someone new comes in, that contract could be valuable to them because they could take and get a 4 cent rate, and then not only have the spread of what our contract is, they could try to reset it and get even more. Is that right? Or they're going to have to be reset when they come in and they're no longer going to have that 4 cent rate that Compute North had. Did you have any insight on that? Or is that kind of still too hard to know right now, just because I think if someone comes in and they're a good partner and they can still get what Compute North was getting and still honor our contracts, I would think at the end of the day, that's what we want to fight for. That would be fair. But I can understand if they're coming in and their contract changes and it goes up, the chances of them trying to push us up is going to be much higher.
Yeah. So I do want to preface that there's a lot of information that are very strictly confidential, and I can't really mention that now. Just know that I am ensuring our rights as much as possible. To your question, who owns the hedge is actually very important. It's actually not Compute North. It's Mercuria. It's another investment entity, and it essentially bought the PPA. And so we're trying to figure out what's going to happen there. The sites are valuable because they're large and they're potentially fully built out, as well as but they're significantly valuable because of their energy contract, right? The contract itself could be sold on the market. You think about this, like if you could buy a contract to buy energy at 4 cents and then sell it over market for 6 cents right now or 7 cents right now, that contract by itself has tremendous value, tens of hundreds, maybe $100 million value. What I believe, and this is not legal advice or anything, it's just practical understanding of the situation, is our contract isn't necessarily the lowest, which means that potentially lower price contracts will be the ones on the cutting boards. And our miners are deployed, meaning that they're installed. So my notion is that, hey, we're there now, we're ready to pay you, turn them on. The price, if you have the hedge, you're still making money. It's not market rate money. You could be making more, but ours isn't that low, but our miners are there now. It's like squatter rights. Like we're there. That's why it was important to do that. I think that was important to do that. I think it's more important to do that than to have the risk of losing the miners, because I think the contract is so valuable to everything.
Yeah.
And I just want to highlight one more thing. I've been talking to many of the players in the industry, and I might not know the new operators. So I've been trying to make sure that, and we're very friendly. I'm very friendly with most people in the industry. So trying to ensure our rights, understanding everything, trying to get as much knowledge as possible is one of my biggest prerogative.
Yeah, no, I know when we talk, you've been very busy and you're just staying connected, trying to meet as many people and just really get your arms around this, because you're giving us the best chance to have the most successful outcome in a very difficult situation here. We very much appreciate that. I know it's tough news to hear. I, on behalf of investors, know that you're doing everything you can and believe we'll have the most successful outcome that we can. We'll go down fighting here and do everything possible. Yeah, and I know it's tough when we have to kind of let this process play out a bit. We don't have answers all the time or major updates, but with you representing the bankruptcy committee and being the head of that, I think you're very connected and focused on all the important pieces and players involved, which is going to put us in a better position than if we were on the outside looking in. So yeah, it sounds if everything gets early November, that sounds like they'll know. I think you said before there's a 45-day window where Compute North has the ability to try to make a case for retaining the contract or the site host place in this deal. Do you think that the chances of them remaining are slim, or is it still possible? I guess if they would remain, maybe chances of the contract staying the same might be higher. If they're replaced, it probably comes down to who that new site host is and what the relationship is, and just are they going to honor the contract? Are they going to try and negotiate? Like, any color there that you can provide or share?
Yeah, so let me go a little deeper on some of this stuff, and because we're so close to this and we've gotten a lot of information, let me share something with everybody. I want to highlight that this is sort of all public information as well. What led to this event? Really, it's been a fight against the debtor, Compute North, and the creditor, Generate Capital. Generate lend $300 million to finance projects in Nebraska and Texas. Well, guess what? We are in Texas, and Fund 1 sits in Nebraska. So I'm directly impacted. So I'm very close to the situation. And these are the two crown jewels, Kearney and Rapala, that's what we call them. And in July, Generate stopped funding new projects and started to be very aggressive towards Compute North I don't have any backstory on that. And then essentially in August, Generate notified that they would be exercising voting rights of Compute North. Generate is a capital company. They're an investment company. They don't have any pedigree in Bitcoin mining or data centers. So they're essentially just capital exercising ownership rights. So in effect, Generate owns 2 sites right now, or the majority of sites. I believe Compute North owns the other portion of the sites. I got an email this morning saying that we had discussions with the debtors council that they tentatively agreed to sell the remaining site portion to Generate, which could mean some potentially resolution. I'm not sure what that means for the contracts and everything, but it means closer resolution on at least the 2 sites that are most impacted. A bunch of other stuff. I don't think it's really I think the whole thing stems not necessarily from energy price and Bitcoin price decrease. It's more about delays. Although, of course, these 2 are big factors.
The delay of when the site was supposed to open, and then just with Bitcoin being depressed right now, just the combination of that 2 really put Compute North in this situation.
Yeah, Compute North is a super leveraged firm. They can't pay those debts. And of course, if the debtor doesn't work with them, the creditor doesn't work with them, which is Generate Capital, then they'll take aggressive action. So this proceeding is mostly just an internal fight between debtors and creditors. It's like the parents are fighting and the kids are starving, especially with the kids. What does the timeline look like? So I talked about the petition date. That's when we started this whole process. And it's going to be pretty quick. So right now we're recording this October 19th, but we're less than a month away from what happens at the close. Now, this is a quick process. I'm not sure what happens afterwards. So now my analysis or my perspective is I believe we'll probably be online by December, I hope. And I believe that our contracts has a better than 50% chance of being, but that's my biggest priority right now, to ensure that those rights, we file a claim against Compute North so our contracts are honored as well, because we have deposits with them.
Yeah. And just looking at this situation, I know it sucks. We're dealing with this on a daily basis, and it's frustrating, and we're trying to do the best we can. And I try to look for silver linings in just this whole situation. Given where the price of Bitcoin is right now, it's roughly, say $19,000-$20,000. It would appear that Bitcoin was 30, 40, 50,000, and we had this issue. The opportunity cost of lost revenue and profit would be far greater than we're in a situation right now with the difficulty level where Bitcoin pricing's at. We're making a profit, but it's not substantial. And yes, if we had these miners online right now, we would still be making more profit. But in the big picture, it'd be far worse if Bitcoin was rallying and we're 30, 40, $50,000 Bitcoin and we're just sitting idle. Is that kind of a fair assessment, fair way to look at this? As yes, the situation sucks, but what could be worse is if we were supposed to be making a lot of money, but with Bitcoin being where it's at, is it like this holdout period until this gets finalized is actually not hurting us relative to if Bitcoin was at a much higher price?
Yes, a good analysis. Our opportunity cost is marginal. We could move our miners to another site, but we would actually be breaking even. What's the point in that? We want to make profits. The profits, if we were online today, would be marginal, would be not very high. And I want to highlight, I think that's actually a much bigger concern and this bigger issue overall. And it's why we need to ensure our contract. I want to highlight some graphs, if you don't mind. So this is a good website, hash rate index. This is the last 3 months of Bitcoin hash rate pricing. What this highlights is a downward trajectory. And if Bitcoin price for the last 3 months, it's been flat. It's not been going down. Why is that going down in price? This measure is a measure of how much our productivity is valued at in the market. And in effect, the reason why this is happening is difficulty has gone up so significantly, which is super surprising to me. In fact,
why is it going up? What's the reason behind it going up?
Yeah, so it went up 13.55% in October 10th. That's insane. It's one of the highest difficulty adjustments. Went up again in August. Price of Bitcoin is pretty much flat around that time. It's not even down. Like August was like 22, 23K. Now it's 10K. Why are these things happening? My biggest assumption is capital has been allocated. If you spent tens and not hundreds of $1 millions um, in these public companies, and your mission is to mine Bitcoin, you're not going to not go forward with those investments that you've made already. So these things were allocated already. People keep talking about, and we have this much machines online by end of the year. Those things are coming to fruition. I hear more of that happening. Celsius has tens of thousands of miners sitting idle, and they said that they got 40 megawatts online the other day. I think break even price. I'm not sure why they're doing it. And then they have more miners coming online because they made that capital investment already.
Yeah.
And I do think that it will slow down, but this has been the biggest surprise, which means that our machines aren't very profitable, unfortunately. Ultimately, all we need Bitcoin to rally, and long term, I'm a big believer in it. I think, of course, once equity markets rally, which could happen in 2023, that's my bet. I don't see the economic conditions being that beneficial. So if the silver lining is basically our miners aren't on, which means that they're not there's no deterioration. Right? Every time you have miners online, there's some deterioration of them because they just get used. So you plug in a computer. If you don't plug them in, they're essentially effectively a new machine. And hopefully they're online in a period when they're more profitable. Obviously, we want to be online regardless. I'd rather be online than not, but that is a silver lining.
Yeah, and the other thing too, with difficulty rate going up, it's due to a lot of these miners coming online that people had already made an investment for, like we have. And so, again, going back to, yes, this sucks, we're not online. Maybe in 2 months when we are online, the difficulty level has maybe gone down. Obviously, it could go up too, but right now it's been going up. Maybe that levels out a little bit and helps our cause. And we didn't really miss not being hashing right now. Our miners were live.
Yeah, I suspect the difficulty will be going up more, mostly because if Compute North sells assets and then someone takes over, that's 200 megawatts is going to be coming online. That's a huge amount of new hash rate. I don't see any other mega projects coming online in near future though. Although I'm sure there's lots of private stuff happening.
Yeah.
I understand this is a tough time. You're invested in this deal. I'm heavily invested in the deal monetarily, as well as I have lots of other machines that are similar models and at even higher price points of operating expenses from a energy perspective. I think our best bet is to ensure our contract rights, to continue to explore alternative options if there's opportunities. Although really talking to somebody in 30 minutes about an option, I doubt it would be a good option. But you know, I think the market's always dynamic and changing. So I'm always going to look out for things that can help our economic conditions.
Yeah, no, that you're doing everything you can. And one thing, if you could just maybe share with investors, just how is Tozy Capital doing compared to other Bitcoin miners in the industry? Just as far as just operationally, are you very lean, sitting in a good position? Obviously, I feel like we're in a better situation than most because we aren't using leverage. But if there's anything there you can share, just to, again, maybe ensure some comfort with just, even though sitting idle sucks, it might not be the worst strategy right now, given the economic climate we're in right now.
Yeah, you know me, Ryan. I'm a very economic person. Like to call it that. That's just my nature and my character. I have lots of money invested. I wouldn't want to spend money on things that don't make money. And to that effect, I have very little overhead. We effectively, Tozy Cap has been covering the overhead of this fund of just maintaining and doing nothing. Any legal fees are being covered by Tozy because we're trying to insure our rights. So compared to any other miner, I would bet probably at the lowest overhead costs. And so, in effect, we were not necessarily just failure penalties for being idle right now.
Yeah. So it's good to know that, yeah, it's tough, but it could be worse. And we don't know how long this will last, but at least we can see it through to the end. I'm a big believer in long term that, we're going to do well in this fund, Bitcoin in general. It's just like everything, even multifamily, some of the other deals we do, we're preparing for the next 6 to 12 months. Just there's some headwinds and things that just going to have to get flushed out of the system, and the strong, well-capitalized firms will get through this. And I believe we'll be there and look back on this as it was tough. and we got thrown a bunch of curveballs. Each day we got up and did the best we could. And at the end of the day, we'll come out and we'll give the best result that we can. And I think that's all anyone can ask for. And I know you're doing everything you can. Appreciate you coming on, really speaking to all the investors in the fund, just giving an update, given your position now with the bankruptcy proceedings and Compute North and just in general. So I appreciate that. And if there's any other questions that come up, feel free to, you guys can reach out to me or to Eng, and we'll definitely get back to you.
I do want to highlight that I have more information to share. I just can't share it, but they will be shareable soon. I do have more. It's not necessarily pertinent to what we're talking about. It's just saying that I'm under confidentiality. I also want to highlight that I want to provide more frequent updates. Sometimes the updates might not be much going on, so I'll make the commitment to provide once every 2 weeks update. We're sending an update this week, and then we'll provide another update, a shorter update in 2 weeks and every 2 weeks. I also want to apologize to everybody who have reached out to me and for my lack of response and I just a little bit loaded on that side, and that pains me, but apologize for the lack of or the quickness of response. We are working towards, by the way, distributions this week. Normal operating procedures is continuing. It's just that, you know, we're not online, which is the same as last month.
All right. Thanks again, Eng, and hang in there, and we'll be talking soon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.